Welcome to Living Martial Arts with Master Ray Gale, aka the Dark Master. Living Martial Arts discuss and examines the everyday exercise, philosophy, and lifestyle of the martial arts enthusiast. The host talks about his own training, past and present, and he also interviews many martial artists to discover how they continue to live their own martial arts journey. Tune in for top tips on how to get the best out of your martial art. Or perhaps you're thinking of starting a martial art. This podcast offers you an easy way to dip your toe in. Sign up for the newsletter at livingmartialarts.com and get regular updates and training tips direct to your inbox. Follow the Dark Master on Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at Living Martial Arts.
Hi, and welcome to the Living Martial Arts podcast with me, the Dark Master. I have a magnificent podcast that I've been looking forward to, and so excited to have two of my favourite people on the podcast. First of all, as most of you probably listen from PUMA will know Master O, and he's with us. How are you doing, Master O?
Very well, sir. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. And also, we have a real treat. We have Mr. Ralph Minott, who is probably one of the nicest guys to ever put on a WT or an ITF Taekwondo dobok. And he's got massive experience in both the fields of WT and also ITF. So, Ralph, how are you doing?
Great. Good to speak to you guys.
Excellent. As I said, I've been looking forward to this podcast because a lot of our people listening here will be PUMA members. They've never had any experience of WTF, and also, probably the changes that have happened in WTF. But also, it's great to speak to you, Ralph, because you've been in both camps, the WTF and the ITF, and you still currently teach Taekwondo, so you've got a lot of experience in those areas. But what I always try and start with, and I'm sure Master will have loads of questions for you as well. I always start with people's story, really, and I know your story will incorporate, your WTF and your ITF. But perhaps just let the audience know how you got into martial arts and the some of the early parts of your journey, really.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting because people walk through your door, and these days you've got no idea about what they did. But in the days when we did martial arts, it was this intriguing thing that people did. And I was interested in sport, never good at sport as a kid. And, as a kid who grew up in the 60s and 70s, they were simple sports. You played football in the winter or you played cricket, and we didn't play rugby. So, the rugby that was around in my day was rugby league, and it used to be on telly on a Saturday afternoon. So, I either played football or I played cricket, and I was useless at both. And at school, we had to do athletics because that's what happened at sports. And what used to happen was I used to just get picked for the last position in anything. So, cricket, I used to have to do wickets. I used to do wickets because we used to have the most fantastic Asian bowlers that used to, have like 100-yard run-ups.
Froze a bit there. Are we back? We froze a little bit. Are we back?
Oh, me.
Are we back? Yeah. Oh, Ralph's frozen a little bit.
Yeah, he has, hasn't he?
I don't know, we got a bit of a malfunction here, so hopefully 1 second. Let me just pause this. Oh, hi, right, we had a little bit of a break there. We lost the signal from Ralph, but he's back again. And he was just giving us an overview on his sporting highlights at school and the fact that he played cricket with a lot of really good Asian cricketers. So go for it, Ralph.
Yeah, so, and because I was a boy of the 60s and 70s, and our school was a massive football school. Everybody was great at football. And so even though we played football, I just never made a team. So I never made the team unless I was a reserve or the last person picked. You know, basketball, I was the 6th person to be picked for the team. And then from the age of 13, I was desperate to be a quantity surveyor, which just happened out of the blue. Something that I really fancied doing. And I ended up going to Trent Polytechnic, as it was there, now Trent University, to study quantity surveying, my lifetime dream as a kid. And at Polytechnic or uni, you have these clubs that you join on Freshers Week. And at Freshers Week, I had this idea that I was going to try martial art. And the reason I was going to try martial art was because in my 6th form, there was a kid who we used to call Scooby-Doo, who did Waterloo. And, you know, he used to walk around the 6th form room and be doing hand moves and stuff like that. And it was just that intrigue at the time of Scooby-Doo doing Waterloo. Everybody getting into all-night kung fu movies because you used to be able to go to the cinema and watch kung fu movies all night.
Yeah, we used to do that.
Yeah. Bruce Lee was the big thing at the time. And I just thought, actually, it's quite intriguing. And I had a mate who did Taekwondo. And I had no idea he did WT Taekwondo. I just knew he did Taekwondo. And I had no idea about anything to do with it, about grades or what he did, just that he did Taekwondo. A guy called Andy Lamb. And I just kind of thought, well, if there's a Taekwondo club, I'll join it. So because he did Taekwondo, I thought, but I'm going to try the Waterloo club first because Scooby-Doo was obviously some kind of kung fu genius, karate genius. So I went to the Waterloo stand on Freshers Week and it was just empty. There's nobody there.
Yeah.
And across the other side of the hall at the Taekwondo stand it was just rammed. So I went over to Taekwondo and ended up joining and just loved Taekwondo. And it was WTF Taekwondo. And actually at the time, when you join, you don't really know what you're doing. I was just doing Taekwondo as far as I was concerned. No idea that there was any difference. And, you know, it's probably, you know, I had to be a red belt by the time I started to appreciate reading magazines that there were other kinds of Taekwondo around. And I used to watch, actually, the UKTA, as they were at the time, team squad training and watching all the boys that became, you know, close buddies of mine and yours as we joined up.
Yeah.
And so that was it, really. I was doing Taekwondo. I was training every hour God sends, doing it. I loved it to death. And I also joined, as well as the Trent Poly Club, I joined the Nottingham Taekwondo Club, which was run by a guy called Dave Hetherington, who was a Taekwondo guy, got his black belt in the forces, came to Britain with Dan grades. At the same time that Ricky Ha was into Britain, bringing new Taekwondo on. So you had this guy, my guy, who was a legend in our area, and he was doing WTF Taekwondo, but he'd learned ITF Taekwondo in the forces. So we did ITF patterns, and WTF was our sport. We did WTF sparring. So when I started sparring, which was at the Nottingham Club, I'd put body armour on, no hand protection, no feet protection. That was it. You couldn't punch to the face. You had to kick to the head. That's all I knew. But we didn't do much sparring. So I trained technically, learned all the ITF patterns up to Chun Mu, but my Taekwondo moves and fighting was WTF. And then I got my black belt after 3 years with this guy with a few double gradings on the way because I was just mad for it. And when I got my black belt, literally 2 months after getting my black belt, the UKTA came to Nottingham to open.
Right.
And I went to a demo up the road from where I trained my Taekwondo. And I thought, what's this UKTA Taekwondo? And the guy who was bringing the club was a guy called Tom Zuza, who you'll know.
Yeah.
And the late Tom Zuza, who was one of the Derby Mafia, Bob Harvey's Mafia, he came and they did this demonstration, which was just the most unbelievable thing I'd ever seen. You know, I'd watched movies and I'd watched people like Bruce Lee, but I watched real people smashing bricks like it was a demolition job. It was just incredible. It's like a demolition scene. Yeah. And then they put this sparring equipment on with gloves and feet, and Tony Saw was one of the people there, and they were sparring. It was really quick and punching each other in the face, and I just thought, this is fantastic. And but I did, I kind of didn't know it. So at the end of it, I went into the bloke who was running it, and I said, look, I do taekwondo. Is there any chance I could come along? And he said, look, what did you do? I said, I do WTF taekwondo. And he said, well, if you buy a license, get a suit, and listen to what we're doing and respect it, you're welcome to join. So at that time, I was just doing both. I was doing 2 or 3 days WTF and a couple of days ITF at the same time.
Oh, wow.
And that was it, really. And I didn't think anything. I didn't think anything of it.
Yeah.
And then, the TAGB formed. Derby moved into the TAGB. So I was with, all the old Derby guys who moved over, Bob Harvey, Brian Townsrow, everybody who moved over, Isaac Carey, all those boys in the good old days. And I was just a black belt training ITF taekwondo and doing WTF as well at the same time and not thinking anything of it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I just want to come back to a couple of things you said at the beginning about, the first thing was about being good at sports. And it's interesting because I've met a number of taekwondo people. I've trained some people who have been really good at taekwondo but could do nothing else. I remember it was Master Donnelly, actually, Master Paul Donnelly. I remember seeing him trying to kick a football. And he couldn't do it. I was thinking, wow, for a guy that talented, he can't kick a ball. I find it really strange. But on the other hand, I will say that Master will probably deny this, but I think he was a better sportsman than me. Actually, I think he was cricket, football. I think he was a bit more an all-rounder. I always did well at sport because I was very competitive, and I just tried as hard as I could at everything I could to be good. But that was the first thing. The second thing was you mentioned Andy Lamb as well. And I remember him really well. Because I fought him a couple of times and I thought, wow, this guy's really good. I was actually quite glad when he disappeared because I thought, wow, he's not anybody. Sorry, that's Ro. You won't ask anything there.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest thing that Rolf hasn't alluded to is that he represented Great Britain at the Olympics in Korea, which is unbelievable achievement, which I'm very jealous of. And I imagine a lot of other Taekwondo people around the UK would be licking their lips wanting to know how you got into it and what was it like and did you wear the hat? And I think there's a great picture of you and the great Hank Mayer as well with his blazer on, and you've got your Olympic Great Britain and Northern Ireland blazer on. Come on, tell us all about that, because that's really... Just before you answer that one, and just to say to the audience out there that bearing in mind at that time, WTF and ITF were either ends of the spectrum in the way that they were and the way that they're thinking. I think that's quite an important point actually at this moment, because when you look at them now, they're a bit closer together. But sorry, carry on, Ralph. Carry on.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think that's a really important point to make. I mean, if you they're both taekwondo, but for me, they're like I talk to them like badminton and tennis.
Rugby league, rugby union.
Rugby league, rugby union is a great example. They're both the same sport, but technically they are poles apart. And you just couldn't, the idea that one person does something and at the same time they can be the top of their country or the world or European or whatever in the same sport is just impossible. It just wouldn't happen, And people do transition between sports, but, a lot more people we see, but it's still unique in percentage terms. You're probably talking less than 1% who transfer between league and union rugby. And, I don't know if anybody transfers between badminton and tennis. And that was our difference, it was.
Yes.
And, and I used to, because I'd started with WTF and I'd started to train with the ITF quite early, because I got my black belt in 81, but in 82 I was already a British champion in WTF. In 83 I then started to do this ITF competition. And I come to ITF competition, and, you know, you, Ray, Ron Sergiu, Arjit Singh, all of those guys were in what was lightweight, which was 64 kilos. In WTF, I fought at 58, which was 12 pounds lighter than that.
Yeah.
And that was week in, week out. So one Saturday I'd be fighting WTF, and the next Saturday I'd be fighting somebody 12 pound heavier who was punching full power to the head, where the rules of semi-contact, as I thought it was, you know, I had more broken noses and injuries in ITF than in my whole time of 10 years fighting WTF. It just didn't happen. You know, I just didn't get injured. I had a foot injury once, and we were kicking full power barefoot. But other than that, you know, I had so many painful experiences fighting ITF because it was that hard. But I just was so determined to learn how to do it.
Yeah. And,
you know, I was really lucky that, you know, at squad training that I used to, in 1985, Dave Oliver said, you need to come to squad training. And I'd seen Kenny Walton at a tournament, and he said, you need to come to squad training. And Dave said, well, before you come to squad training, come to Warwick. And we train at Warwick on a Friday night. So he said, you come to Warwick on a Friday night, and we'll teach you how to fight points fighting as well. So I'm a WTF guy. And in WTF, in those days, it was about 1 point for everything. A kick to the head was 1 point. A kick to the body was 1 point. You got no points unless the judge saw the body move. So somebody's head had to move with a kick for you to score a point. And if you knock somebody out in a 3-3-minute round, you'd won. So, you know, if you could knock somebody, if you're going to fight 6 times in a day and you could knock 4 people out in the first or second round, it was fantastic because you'd saved your energy for a tournament. And in 1981, I just got my black belt. And my instructor said, look, you haven't done much sparring. You want to try it. Just go to a tournament. So we went to a championship at Copeland School in North London, which turned out to be a selection championship for the Ecuador Games, which were in 83 or 84. And I just thought it was a tournament. And I just fought in the tournament. And after the first fight, I thought, actually, I quite get this. And this was WTF body armour. And I was just dropping people. And, you know, and it wasn't that difficult. People were hitting me and I was thinking, oh, yeah, this is quite painful. But I was kicking people. And for my weight, 58, I was just dropping people. And got to the semi-final and thought, crikey, this is interesting. And ended up fighting a guy called Sean Daly, who I still think is one of the greatest WTF technicians ever. And that's looking at everybody that I've seen post my competition, watching all the great people that have, you know, donned a suit. And there've been some fantastic people in the last games that I really admired watching. But in terms of people who could deliver super techniques and knock people out, and I very rarely see people get knocked out these days, even though the rules allow you to get knocked out.
Yeah.
You don't see it. People who could deliver speed and knockout. He was just unbelievable, this guy. And I ended up fighting him in the semi-finals, and it was a draw. And at the end of the draw, the referee would make a decision. It didn't like go to extensions. The referee would make a decision, and they made the decision, gave it to him. And I just thought, oh, that's quite interesting. Ended up with a rubbish little medal. And then after the tournament, somebody said, you don't know that this was a selection championships for a world championship. And that was just it. It kind of spurred me on. And, you know, within months of that, I was the British champion, and that was it. So you got a guy who's a British champion in WTF, and most things, you know, I was picking up medals or winning, and going to ITF tournaments and getting battered. I was going to UKTA, getting battered. And it was probably 1985 before I won a trophy at a tournament. And as soon as I started winning trophies, and that was no secret that I was training at Warwick on a Friday night, learning how to point spar, learning how to fight against your Mick Keoghs and your Steve Merricks and Dorian Bytons, and all those guys were down there. And learning how to points fight, then going into freestyle, because TJB was then going to freestyle karate and fighting anybody. So you start to learn how to fight. you start to learn ring craft, you start to learn how to use your hands and feet, you start to learn how your movement works. I then really started to use my WTF, back leg kicking, ring movement, footwork, spinning. I used a lot of WTF with ITF hands and created the style that started to really start being successful in ITF fighting. And it was easy for me then because all I was doing when fighting ITF was switching in hands. And when I fought WTF, stop using my hands. That was it. Other than that, simply keeping simple things. And I was able to kick hard in the UK today. Back in those days, people used to kick hard and you never used to get warned, and it was, if I fought Paul Tarn, it was either him getting disqualified or me surviving. So, you had to kick hard. So in those days, I was able to use WTF in a traditional way in ITF fighting. It was great.
Yeah.
And, it got to probably 88. And between 86 and 88, I think it was about 86, they announced the Olympic Games was in Seoul, Korea. The home country can select a sport that goes on to what they call their demonstration program. And the demonstration tick, you compete exactly the same, but the medals just don't go on the final medal tally.
Yeah.
And so we knew that it was going to be in as demonstration sport. We had no idea what that meant. We thought we'd have to pay for everything, and that's what we thought. So, all the time I've always worked. I was in construction, and the construction firm I worked for, I had to apply to get 4 weeks off holiday to go to Olympic Games, in the hope that I got picked. And between 86 and 88, there was like a selection, 3 or 4 selection championships. And what happened was the weights that went were the most successful WTF weights, male only, that WTF UK had achieved in world events, international events. And my weight division, 58 kilos, was one. The next weight division above it, which was featherweight, was one. The weight division below it, which Andy Lamb used to fight in, which was fin or flyweight, was one. And middleweight, I think, they were the 4 weights out of all the weights.
Yeah.
And you have to remember, at that time, the person that will never be remembered, but he's probably the greatest because of the world medals that he'd achieved in a WTF form that was really tough. There's a guy called Lindsay Lawrence.
Yes.
So I'm sure he's still out there.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
And this guy had won silver and bronze medals at 2 or 3 world championships.
Mm-hmm.
But he fought welter, and welter wasn't, notwithstanding the fact that he'd got those medals, welter wasn't picked as a consistent winning division by the Korea, and wasn't one of the weight divisions that went.
Yeah.
So I knew that to win, I'd have to win over all these 4 tournaments. And the guy that was probably the toughest guy to beat was a guy called Mark Richardson by then.
Yeah.
Who you guys will remember. Who used to be ITF.
Yeah.
And he went the other way. He came from ITF in about 83, 84 into WTF when Tom Wenshin moved over.
That's right.
And he was unbelievable. And he was the opposite.
He was awesome.
He still is.
Yeah, incredible front leg, incredible kicking ability, great fighting spirit.
Well, can I just say on that one, Rob? Just stop you there. Yeah. It's interesting because once again, I remember being a black belt and watching him as a red belt, thinking, "Wow, this guy's going to come up and he's going to be." And when he obviously got his back, he disappeared. And I thought,
disappeared.
Where did he go? He obviously went to WTF on that time.
Very friendly, very friendly guy as well, wasn't he? Nice man. Yeah, I still sort of I know of him and what he's up to through our martial arts dealerships, but great name.
It was just unbelievable, and he had a group of unbelievable fighters.
Yeah,
and he was one of these trainers who was just merciless. I mean, people like Paul Green, who's one of the greatest WTF people to pour, came out of his camp. The Green brothers were his kids who came out and went on and did great things. He was just unbelievable. And I remember me and him used to have a dust-up all the time. It always used to be me and him in the finals. And, but you used to have, like in the days when we used to fight, you used to have 3 or 4 people, David Bailey and people like that who were great fighters. And you had to beat some tough people to get there. So I think in these 4 tournaments, he won 1, I won 1. We then had a event where I think he got injured, but I got 2nd place or something like that.
Right.
And then the final one, the points worked, whoever won it would have got.
Yeah.
And I beat him, you know, and that was against the odds because he was technically better than me. Yeah. And, you know, he was just a star. And so for me beating him, and the thing that was difficult was by 88, everybody in WTF knew I was fighting in ITF as well, because I was then scoring and winning and you know, in Combat magazine and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah.
So there was a bit of a foray about letting a guy who was doing ITF go. But my coach at the time was a guy called Ray Lightfoot, late Ray Lightfoot, who was an ex-England team fighter, international referee, really strong guy from Mansfield, tough cookie. He just beat the table and said, you know, justice is here. You set the rules. The guy's won. He's got to go. And that was it. You know, you get your letter. Right. You get a letter from the Olympic Committee saying you've been picked to go to Olympic Games. And the letter basically invites you to go to Olympic headquarters and collect all your equipment. And the Olympic headquarters in those days used to be in Wandsworth, where it's now in Loughborough. Yeah. And I remember catching the train to London, turning up at Olympic, handing my letter over, and somebody saying, great, you need to just go round the back, take a suitcase, and just go round and fill it. And, you know, I just filled my suitcase with England, Great Britain gear, blazers, tracksuits, trainers, everything. And, you know, suddenly you're walking around with a massive suitcase and it's real. And I turned up at my mum's, opened this suitcase and said, Mum, look at this. It's real now.
Yeah.
And it was just, it was, you got to think that this was the first time that WTF ended up on the Olympic stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, if you Olympic Games we see on television, and behind the scenes, you got to think, you get an invitation. It says, right, you need to be at Heathrow Airport on such and such a day. You're flying out. That's all you know. So I turn up, meet my other Taekwondo pals, and there was us 4 fighters. There was my great pal Gary Sykes, who was the assistant coach, and the guy Tony Slaney, who was the brother of Mary Decker Slaney, the runner. Right. And he was the team manager, and we had a doctor who was assigned to us from the Olympic medical team. Yeah. So, you know, we flew out. That was our team. And there was me, there was Chris Sawyer, fought middleweight. In fact, no, we had a light heavy. Chris Sawyer was a lightweight, I think it was called, which was above welter. And then we had a middleweight guy called Dave, whatever his name, Dave. Then we had the little guy, me, and a guy called Seelan Rangasamy who fought. So there was 5 of us who fought. Yeah, yeah. And Dave Fraser was the middleweight. And we arrived at the airport. I remember driving down to the airport and thinking I'll park my car. And turned up at the airport, and it was, in those days, £6 a day. And I thought, I'm going to be out for a month. So I've got 28 days. And I'm thinking, Jesus, my car's going to cost like 150, 200 quid to leave my car. I was driving around trying to find somewhere to park it. And in the end, just abandoned it. And Seelan Rangasamy's brother had dropped him off, had come to the airport with him on the train. And I said, can you drive? He says, yeah. And I said, well, do you want to take my car? So he took my car. And then we just got to the plane. And then when you got to the plane, the air hostess just handed you, say, right, you go there. And we were in the jumbo jet in the bubble.
Okay, wow.
So we were in the jumbo jet in the bubble, in first
class, isn't it? That's the first class area. The
whole plane, the only people on the plane were GB Olympic athletes.
Wow.
That was it. You know, then you realise you've made it. You know, you're sitting there, you've got, you know, Seb Coe, Steve Cram, Peter Elliott, Linford Christie, you know, that they're the people that are sat around the plane, you know, and it was, brilliant. We were in the bubble with the 3-day eventers. So you had Mark Phillips, Princess Anne's husband was there, and, you know, people like that. It was just totally bonkers.
Yeah.
Totally bonkers.
Well,
I could listen to that all day because I think, as a Taekwondo martial artist and sports person, I remember watching the demonstration. It was on live TV.
Yeah, that's right.
I thought,
yeah,
oh my god,
absolutely right.
Yeah,
and
it was fabulous. I was trying so I could see anybody on there, but obviously it was.
Yeah, and the demonstration, the Korean people, they did it twice. So they did a dress rehearsal for all the Korean people to come and see it, because on the day, clearly only the wealthiest people can buy tickets to get in on the opening ceremony, can't they? So on the day when they did the demo, we actually went and watched it. So on the day when you're in it, you're ending up in a separate field waiting to walk on. Then when you walk on, and you miss all the stuff that happens beforehand, but we'd seen it because we went to watch the dress rehearsal with the Korean people, which was just unbelievable. And doing Taekwondo and being in South Korea and being a WT, it was like being a celebrity.
Yeah.
Everywhere we went, we were just celebrities. Just unbelievable.
Well,
I think we told that story. Well, I think we told you before about we went to Korea for the ITF World Championships.
Yeah.
They call it the homecoming because it was the ITF.
Yes.
And we went to local shops. And we had our Great Britain tracksuits on, and we were followed by, 40, 50 children following us.
Yeah.
And I had a haircut at the time, a little bit like David Beckham, and they thought I was David Beckham. I mean, I'm the last person. Ray looks more like David Beckham than I do. And they were like, oh, it's just amazing. But because, and also, the banknotes have got Dosan and
yes, that's right.
Yorgok on them. It was just amazing. If you spoke to anybody, most people don't really speak English, but over there, or they didn't when we were there. But if the odd person did, you started talking to them. Oh, you had a big crowd of people around you. Back knowledge of Korean history and Taekwondo.
Yeah, the currency of Korea is Taekwondo. Just incredible.
Yeah. Well, it was massive. I mean, what I will say is that 88 World Championships was a huge thing, huge platform for Taekwondo. Not just WTF Taekwondo at that time, but certainly ITF Taekwondo as well, because it got the name Taekwondo out there, which actually after the Olympics, everybody knew what Taekwondo was, and they knew where it came from. So
it was that for me that year. If you remember, the Olympic Games was September through to October. So we flew out on like 3rd or 4th of September, and we were there till like the 2nd of October. But in the July, the TAGB hosted the first Open World Championships.
Yes.
And the lightest weight division was 57. Mm-hmm. So I thought, obviously I'm training every single day for 2 years, twice a day, to be an Olympian. Mm-hmm. And that was great for me being able to fight ITF as well, because I was in great shape. Yeah. And I thought I'd do this tournament, make sure I don't get, the thing was not to get injured, but I'll do the July World Champs just like as part of my Olympic preparation. So it wasn't that I was under pressure. And if you remember, the team in the first World Champs were all heavyweight. So it was little guys. We didn't go looking. Mark and his
well, you weren't good. It's because you weren't good enough.
There. We were thrown under the bus. I was like, mate.
Yeah.
I got to be honest. I was in that team. What a team we had! Right.
It was an awesome team.
We just smashed everybody all the way through.
It was just and you look back to that. It was the greatest. We had some fantastic times as a mixed weight team. But the most amazing Taekwondo you've ever seen is those teams that TAGB put together. They were nobody could beat them, could they?
No,
it was just unbelievable. We had middleweights through to heavyweights who could kick, who could move, who could do anything. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah. Every weight division had about 4 international standard fighters that could boss anybody, and on the open circuit as well, of course.
Yeah, dead right.
Well, it was a great tournament, and I was really, really well, I wasn't upset. I was actually quite I was okay, but I got beaten in the semi-finals by Ron Sergey.
Oh wow!
And it went to some extensions. I I remember looking at the floor thinking, I've got this, and then his hand went. I was like, oh no! but actually, I was happy. I was happy for all the people within the THB at that time.
Yeah,
we had some awesome fighters. It was just amazing, and I think our strength in depth. I don't know if it's ever, certainly from an ITF point of view, for one team has ever been equalled. I don't know if it ever.
No, I don't. And also you've got to think that event probably had 3,000 spectators, and it was just it was a standout event in martial art.
It was.
And because 57 was the lightest weight.
Yeah.
And because I was making 58 every Saturday for WTF, I was making 57. So I made 57. And I was just entering, India one round, Holland next round, Germany next round. And I was just creeping through the rounds, 5 or 6 fights. And then ended up in the final, fighting a Dutch guy, from nowhere. And for me, it's still the hardest lesson learning, where tactically that I just played it wrong. I played a WTF-styled fight against a guy who I should have been dropping hands on.
Yes.
And ended up losing the final. Tried, and kind of, I was quite philosophical about it because I still had the Olympic Games to go to. But I got back for Olympic Games in October, quite dejected because we all went out semi-finals or earlier than that. Sorry, quarterfinals or earlier. And looking at the professionalism and the standards that people were going to, it was professional WTF. And UK didn't move to being a professional WTF until, mid to late 2000s. But,
correct.
Back then, other countries, Turkey, Korea, Denmark, they were just professional WTF people. And I was so despondent about it and thought, I'm going to put my mind, having done so well in the World Championship, Open World Champs, try and put my mind to ITF. And literally, 2 weeks after I got back from Olympic Games, I got a phone call from Dave Oliver. And Dave Oliver rang up, he said, Ralph, you come work on a Friday, but you were the highest placed guy in under 57. Do you want to come to Germany for a tournament?
Oh, yeah.
And that was it. And, and that was my first call up to THB. And I thought, it was this world which I lived in, where in WTF I used to have a first aid kit that had everything in it. I used to take tracksuits. I used to have my sweatsuits to warm up, to stand in the sauna and lose. But I just have everything. And I remember turning up at Birmingham Airport with a full bag. And Dave Oliver threw a bag at me, and it was just full of stuff.
Yeah.
It had suits in, it had a tracksuit in, it had gear. And I was like, this is ridiculous. And that tournament, where Kenny was there, Kenny Walton, Kim Stones. I'm sure you were there, Mark. One of you two were there. Definitely.
Yeah, I remember I was there. Yeah.
And and the crack was unbelievable. From the minute you went there,
great fun,
Dave was ripping into everybody. It was just the greatest experience. And after that, I was never going to look back. And I thought probably another year, still doing WTF and still doing well. But in the end, I just thought, no, this is, the international ITF circuit was going to be my thing.
Yeah, well, let me. I'm going to stop you there, guys, because we've come to the end of this one. But the people that listen to this, you'll be glad to know that we're going to be doing a part 2. So make sure you're listening, because we're now into the TAGB days of Mr. Ralph Minott and ourselves as well, where we all had a good time, and as he just alluded to, they were fantastic days, and it wasn't about the tournament; it was always about the friendships. That's really what it was about. But I just want to say thank you, Master O, thank you, Master Minott, for taking the time, and we'll see you in part 2. Thank you.
Great catch up. Great catch up.
Lovely, Ralph. Well done, buddy.